Hello and welcome to this dvlp.energy tutorial on the grid connection assessment for energy producers and also consumers in the medium voltage level and above. Here with dvlp.energy we have several data points to assess opportunities to connect to a local electricity grid, but also risks for projects such as battery storage, wind, PV, data centers. I am today showing you the options here in the dvlp.energy app using a battery project in the state of Bavaria. Here we're looking at a connection point in the high voltage level in the 110 kV and looking at the different data layers that are available to assess the local connection options. For this, you find the data layers here on the right side. We are focusing on the power grid and on the respective information. You see here the project. It's a battery park planned close to a local substation. So let's have a look at the different connection options. Before we start, I will switch though to a less colorful background map in order to be able to better understand the local data points. All right, and we're starting with a very kind of high-level assessment of the local grid operators and in this case also the investment, the kind of the local investment cost. So here in the very top you'll find the different grid operators in the different voltage levels. In this case we wanted to look into the high voltage level. And there we are. So here we are in the grid area of Bayernwerk Netz GmbH, which is the largest one in Bavaria. And we would also be able to here directly view the kind of the investment cost that we would have to pay as an electricity consumer and the different voltage levels depending on where we would like to connect. And we also provide information on average time required by the grid operator to process a connection agreement. So this is the attributes you'll find here in the lower part. There is also a digitization index linked to the grid operator, which is probably rather secondary. So here we are at the area of Bayernwerk. Now let's have a look at the local infrastructure, and we're starting with just inspecting kind of where the infrastructure is actually placed, located. The high voltage line is basically immediately next to our project site, and we have a substation here that we can inspect in a second. Now, if we would like to understand the connection opportunities, we have different data layers available that point either, let me switch that back to English, that point either towards connection opportunities or connection risks, and that are rather quantitative or also qualitative. I would like to elaborate a little bit along this range in this tutorial. So let's maybe start with a very quantitative assessment, a quantitative data point, which is the direct indication for a connection coming from the grid operators themselves, and this is called also SNAP data. So SNAP is a tool that is provided by the grid operators and shows connection points in the for projects that are up to 20 megawatt. And usually though only for the production of electricity. There are some exceptions where they also provide an indication for capacities in the consumption direction, but in this case for Bavaria we only have that for the feed-in scenario. And now you can also nicely filter the data set, which really gives you a quantitative view on the the current connection option. If we put the filter on greater or equal than, let's say, 10 megawatt, we want to collect a rather larger park. We do see that there is no green point, which indicates no available capacity as of today at our local substation. So that's definitely a risk factor. we see also that the connection points are rather distant from our location here. All right, now that could of course also mean that eventually we have to build our own substation. Let's continue and look into the other kind of indicators and data points here. So turning off a snap, let's say another also quantitative data set pointing towards potential risks, rather connection risk, is the redispatch data. We have redispatch measures available both on a plant level, but also on a substation level, which is an indication for the cause of the redispatch measure, the cause of the bottleneck in this case. So what we see here now, I activated the redispatch measures, is we see the different plants, in this case mostly in Varia solar plants. We can also have a closer look and also maybe activate the solar plants. And now you see in those purple circles all the plants that over the past 12 months were affected by a redispatch, by grid bottlenecks basically. And we also not only show where the redispatch measures were located or which plants were affected, but we actually also are able to view how often and to what extent the redispatch measure took place. So in this case, we have probably a roof-mounted PV plant here that faced most of the redispatch during the summer period. In April, we had, as an example, 3 different redispatch measures over 14 hours. And a couple of months, of course, usually the winter periods here for the solar plants were not affected. Now, the interesting part here is that this, of course, gives you a direct indication, a quantitative indication on of a potential bottleneck in the grid. And we also see from the data that is coming directly from the grid operators the bottleneck sites. And in this case, the bottleneck actually that was responsible for those measures here is directly located around our substation here. So we are also consolidating all the measures that basically contained the bottleneck location here and sum them up, and then also see the amount of hours and total energy that was curtailed, that was kind of redispatched over the past 12 months because of that bottleneck. And here, very easily, the larger this number, of course, the more severe the bottleneck is in size. What we see here is that we actually have almost constantly redispatch measures, apart from the kind of the few 3 months in winter, but already in March, the redispatch took quite a sizable shape again. So this is a clear risk factor for a grid bottleneck, and of course also a potential risk to connect, mostly a producer of electricity, which unfortunately, of course, are with our battery as well. So let's move to the next part, which is a more qualitative assessment of grid bottlenecks. I think, at that point, we already have quite a good view or quite a good indication, but there is also quite explicit data available on grid bottlenecks that is published by the grid operator as well, and that is called a grid bottlenecks. In this case, we have a bottleneck region here. So the grid operators in this case doesn't show exactly where the bottlenecks lie in this data. However, it gives you an overview of the kind of degree of bottlenecks in this local area. And in this case, we have an impact degree of 40 to 60%, meaning that 40 to 60% of the grid here is affected by a bottleneck, which is, let's say, not unusual, of course, for South Germany, but at the same time rather on the higher end, and in this case also confirming the indicators that we already saw before. Now, let's go one level deeper and actually look at the different origins of these bottlenecks and understand better where the bottlenecks are coming from. And for this, we are assessing in very great detail the amount of connected capacity, both on the feed-in side, but also on the electricity consumption side for each and every substation Germany-wide. So you can just click on a specific substation, and then you'll get the option to inspect the insights here. So this is the capacity insights. There is a detailed profile over the past 12 months again of the different loads and the different generation capacities. And these are also available here in this more graphical overview, which I'm going to use now. We can select from a max capacity and a mean capacity level, depending on the, let's say, degree of conservativeness in our assessment. I will go now with a mean aggregation type, and now you look at the mean capacity locally connected to the substation, both on the load side, split by private and industrial loads, and then also on the generation side, here split by generation technology. And if I'm looking at the total generation here, I'm already seeing kind of which is not unusual for South Germany, that we have a clear, a clear kind of spike in the summer period, usually around the mid of the day in summer, which of course indicates the high amount of solar generation that is connected here. And now, interestingly, I can also view the net load, which basically is the electricity generated, or the other way around, the electricity consumed minus the electricity generated, to also see how much of the electricity maybe is consumed locally. And here we see that due to the vast capacity locally installed of solar generation assets, we do see quite a significant net negative capacity here, meaning that the bottleneck is clearly coming from the solar generation. And if I would now connect another generation asset, as an example, in my case the battery storage unit, I would very likely have to count in flexible connection agreement and potentially a loss of operation freedom during these peak hours here. So that's something that I can nicely anticipate by viewing this data here. Great. One thing that I forgot to mention actually in respect to the redispatch, there is currently, as you're well aware, law in the draft state that that provides the grid operators the right to restrict new grid connections in areas that have relatively high redispatch amount in relation to the potential electricity generation. And this is a data set that you will also find here, that we have also calculated, which is called capacity limited network areas. This basically shows you areas in the grid that suffer from high relative redispatch values. So in this case, in our current area, we are at the redispatch share of roughly 1% of the potentially or theoretically available generation capacity, which is maybe a warning sign. It's not yet the threshold right now is defined at 3%, which would reach here in the north. So that would be a clear red flag. However, in this area, of course, there might be also a risk if the current law would turn into reality. Now, very important, we can maybe conclude at that moment that a connection to this substation is unlikely. We also face, or at the given time, we face quite a significant bottleneck in this area. So very, very likely we would not be able to connect to the current electricity grid here. However, now, very important, usually strong bottlenecks are, of course, also the basis to expand the grid. So it's very important that we have a look at the grid expansion measures as well, to also assess potential opportunities, future opportunities, to connect our project. dvlp.energy, we have digitized all grid connection plans and continuously updating them as well. So here you see the expansion measures in detail on the map with different planning horizons, 2028, 2033, and 2045. Now, 2045 might be a little bit too long term, but let's have a look here. 2028, a black point appeared on our map indicating an expansion measure. So let's have a look what this says. And this actually is now interesting because we have an expansion of this substation. There is a replacement increasing the transmission and transformer capacity by 100 MVA, so that's definitely significant. The reason that was given is an increase in generation and consumption locally. We have consumption-related, production-related bottlenecks, so the reason is to resolve those bottlenecks. That's great in the sense, and the expected start of construction was January 2026, so that's interesting. We have a commissioning date for 2028. So very important to understand here, of course, because that might give us a potential a future connection date, which is, in this case, I would argue not too far away, given we might also need a bit of time to actually develop the project further. So that might be actually a nice outlook. Yeah? So we can maybe add to our conclusion that the situation as it is right now is rather pessimistic. There is a severe risk for a bottleneck. However, we do see that in the future, in March 2028, the bottleneck should be resolved and we might be able to connect our project then, which could suit our project timeline. If you have any additional questions on the way the data works on the app in general, do not hesitate to get in touch. I hope you enjoyed the video and let me know if you have any feedback, questions, or comments.